how to we familiarize ourselves with the interface of GIS or QGIS. We loaded our vector data sets onto the QGIS, try to explore some of the tools in QGIS, and also we also learned how to style our shapefiles or our vector data sets, and we also explored the attributes, where the attributes are, how you can be able to visualize the attributes. And I think the last thing we did was to compose a simple map. Yeah. So basically, for the sake of those of us who didn't join, weren't able to join on Monday, that's basically what we learned. So today we are going to build on what we did. Okay, so I will share my screen. Please, can you see my screen now?
Yeah, we can see it.
Hello, please, can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. All right, so today's session will be very concise and brief. Yeah, for that matter. So today we are going to, the first activity is for us to load our data sets onto the QGIS. Then we will import the data sets into our PostGIS database. So as it stands now, I'm assuming we all have our database readily installed on our machine. Then I will show you how you'll be able to connect your database to the QGIS. So there are two approaches we are going to use today. So we'll use the QGIS to import the data into our PostGIS database. Then we'll also go out of QGIS and use the PostGIS bundle, which came with the installation, to also import the shapefile into the database. Then we'll visualize the data in the PostGIS and try to see if we can run some 1 or 2 queries. Then if there is enough time, we will jump onto the GeoServer, touch the introductory aspect of GeoServer. Yeah. Okay. So for today's section, we will be using on the QGIS. I would like each and everyone to load your region and your health facilities data sets. So when you go to the data set folder in the repository, or what I just shared in the group, after extraction, you should see a folder called data sets, and inside the folder you should see something similar like what I'm showing on my screen. So for the purpose of illustration, we will first of all load our region shapefile. Okay, so I have my region shapefile loaded. I will also load the health facilities also here. Then one last which one should we use? Okay, let's use the water bodies. So I want us to load 3 shapefiles on our screen. So what we have here, we have our region, we have our health sites or health facilities, and we have our water bodies. So as it stands now, I know each and every one of you can load the data onto the screens and also should be able to manipulate the data, styling, and interact with the data sets. Okay, so just for the sake of those of us who didn't join on Monday, so Monday I touched based on if you want to use if you want to visualize the attributes, you right click on the feature in the layer panel, then you go to open attribute table, then you should be able to see the attributes. So with the water bodies, these are the attributes in there. And this data set was inherited from OSM. Yeah. Let's check our health facilities. Okay, so assuming I'm going through the attributes and I want to visualize this row, this particular feature on the map, I have to just highlight that row and just click on the zoom to map selection. So you can see the feature being highlighted and centered on the map. Okay. So I'm going to pause for 20 seconds for those of us who are now loading the data sets onto their QGIS to do that. Then I'll continue. Okay, so I assume we've all been able to load the shapers onto the QGIS. All right, so someone will ask, why are we doing all this? We want to learn how to build a geoport or a WebGIS application. Why are we interacting with QGIS and doing all these things? Yeah, so to build any system or to build any web application or a software, that is going to be a software, let me say, a WebGIS application. The first thing that has to come in mind is the data source. So what data sets are we going to use? You have to categorize the data sets. Okay, so we have, let's say you've been given shape files, you've been given images, you've been given SYZ data sets with API links. So you have to categorize all of these. Then you now think about how are you going to get all these data sets on the map or on our system. The first thing that comes in mind is database. Okay, so out of all these that I've mentioned, how many of these can be injected into the database so that we save that in the database? So you should be able to identify if it's a shapefile, you can do that. If it's GeoJSON, you can do that. If it's an image, you can, but it's not advisable to inject SLI data into your database. It will slow down your database. So I will show you how to go about all these. I wanted to upload an image on the platform, but the image is about 1.5 gig. So I'm trying to find a way to make it much more smaller so that I can share that probably this evening or before our session on Friday. Okay, so now that we've thought about our data sets, the next thing is to create our database. Our application has to have a database. So I will launch my my Postgres database. So you should see something like this. In your screens, you should see some will see localhost, some will see PostgresSQL 14, some will see PostgresSQL 13, depending on the version you installed. You only see that. I'm having multiple connections here because I've connected to different sources online. Yeah, so I'll go into my local database. Then I will come to, okay, so now before I even go to that, let me just show you the interface. So the PGAdmin is a client software that helps you to connect to the PostgresSQL database, or the PostGIS database, right? So the PGAdmin helps you connect and interface with the PostGIS database. So when you install, there are so many ways in installing the PostGIS database. The most the simplest one is what I shared, using the executable file. Some can choose to install just the Postgres database on the machine, then later download just PGAdmin and do the connection. Yeah. So if you want to add a new server, so let's say you have a database sitting somewhere on the server and you want to connect to that database, you just have to come to the service, you right click on it, then you come to create, then click on server. Then over here, the name is a name that will help you identify the database that you are connecting. So let's say this is a look. I'm just illustrating if you want to add a new data set, a new data source to your PGAdmin. So I will just say GIS, then I'll come to connection. And connections, over here, you have to input the server's IP. So each server has an IP, or it has a URI. So you can input that in there. And defaultly, Postgres comes with a port, runs on port 5432. That defaultly, but you can choose to change the ports to either 5433 or 5434. But defaultly, just keep it aside so that you wouldn't go into any problem. Then we have over here the database. So the name of the database on the server that you want to connect, you put in there. Then the username. Defaultly, the database has a user called Postgres, and that's it. You can keep that one there. Then you add the password to it. So this is showing you how to connect to a different source or a different database, either online or on another internal server. If it's on your machine where you are supposed to add your the host over here, instead of the IP, you type in your local host because it's on your machine. Then all the other parameters should be the setup, the parameters you provided during the setup. Okay, all right. So I will just close this. So I just illustrated the procedure you go through to add a different source, like what I have here. So you can see I have multiple sources here, and these are different servers that I'm connecting to. Okay, so we, for the purpose of our section this evening, we would like to create our database, a database that we'll be using for our WebGIS development. Please kindly mute yourself. Please kindly mute yourself. All right, thank you. Okay, so to create a database, first of all, you have to right click on the database, then you'll see create, then you click on database. Okay, so we have to give our database a name. So for this illustration, I'm going to give it geospatial. You can give it any name that you would like to give, but I'm just giving it geospatial. Geospatial_DB. So that's the name of my database. Then the owner defaultly is Postgres. Okay. I will share some links, links to tutorials that explain extensively on the Postgres and the PGAdmin, how to familiarize yourselves with the PGAdmin and all that. But for the purpose, the main objective of this program, we'll just touch base on the things that we want to know in all these tools. Then we can use that in building our software. Okay, so our database name is geospatial_DB. For definition, I'll keep all the other things default. Like I'll keep the default settings. Then you just have to click on save. Okay, so it's telling me that I already have a database in the databases I've created called geospatial_DB. So let me change the name. I'll just use geospatial. I hope that goes through. Okay, there's another geospatial. Okay, let me change the name. Let me use WebGIS. I'm sure there is nothing like that in there. Okay, so I hope by now your database should be created. So when it's done creating, it will just open the database. So this is the database we just created. We have cast, we have catalog, our share documents. If I'm to go through each and every one of these items, we are not going to finish today's section. So I'm going, as I made mention in there, I'll just touch base on what we need. So we move on. Okay, so this is our database, and we have schema, and the schema defaultly it creates a public a schema called public. You can create different schemas, but for the purpose of illustration, we'll keep the default, that's the public. So within the schema, the public schema, that's where we will. Within the schema, we'll create the tables. So you can see over here, our tables, we don't have anything there. There are 0 tables, like there's nothing in there. Yeah, and because the main purpose of what we are trying to build is a WebGIS or a geospatial database. So we are creating a geodatabase. We have to enable the database to have that capability to hold the shape files, our geospatial data set, the data that is coming with a spatial reference. So to do that, we have to add an extension. So the extension I made mention yesterday, I mentioned you should install that together with the Postgres, and that's the PostGIS extension. So the PostGIS bundle. So if that is installed, when you come to your database, so you highlight on your database that you've created, then you come to create, you will see create extension over here. You click on the extension, then you click on the drop down and you search for PostGIS. Oh, sorry. So you should be able to see PostGIS. We have other PostGIS, but we will be using just the PostGIS. So you select PostGIS and you click on save. then it's going to create, when you study your database world, when you come to the extensions, what is extensions? Okay, so when you come to extensions under your database, there is PostGIS added to it. So that's the PostGIS. So now we've enabled our database to hold, to accommodate our spatial data sets. In the same way, you can, the process that we just did, you can also write a script to do that. So to do that, okay, so I'll come to that later. So let me pause for some 10 seconds for those of us who are trying to add the extension to the database to do so before I move to the next phase. Okay, so someone is asking, I don't have a database. Okay, so I'll tackle all the questions after the section as we do it here. Okay, so now that we've been able to add our extension, let's go back to our QGIS. Okay, so we have our QGIS here, and okay, let's just confirm. We can see that under the table we don't have any tables in our database. So when you create a database, you create tables within the database. Yeah, and if you have multiple databases and there are connections, it's advisable for you to create all the relationships. And I think that's another topic for another day, which we'll look at that. So we are now going to inject our data, our shapefile into the database. So to do that, go to your QGIS. After loading these 3 data sets here, go to your QGIS, go to your database on the menu, the menu bar, then click on Database Manager. Okay, so when you click on your Database Manager, okay, I forgot one thing. We have to connect our database to the PostGIS. So, sorry, our database to the QGIS before we import. So to do that, we come to this elephant head icon here on your left panel. You will see an elephant head there. If you can't see that, you can come to add menu, the add data source. Then you see this elephant head here. Okay. Okay, so I've already connected to one earlier. So I'll create a new connection. So I'll click on new. So I'll give the connection a name. I'll say, I'll just give the same name as the database, WebGIS. So I'll easily identify the connection. The services, you can leave it blank. Host is localhost because the database is sitting on our machine. If it were to be an online database, you have to input the server IP or the URI in there. Okay, and our port to our database is defaultly 5432. That's our port. And the name of our database that we created is WebGIS. That's what I created. So over here, kindly put the name of the name of the database you created here. So mine is WebGIS. Okay. So when you are done, you come to basic. The SSL mode, leave it as default. The configuration, come to basic. Right. When you come to basic, then you enter the username of the database, which is Postgres. So defaultly, we didn't change the default user. So we have Postgres, and you enter the password to your database. When you were installing the database, you were asked to create a password during the installation. So you will need that password here. So I will just input my password here. I would like to store this so that anytime I come back, I don't have to input these credentials here again. So after you've provided all these parameters, you can check your connection whether it's connected. So you can see that connection to PostGIS was successful. Sorry. So when you see that notification, let me do that again for those of us who didn't see that. So connection to WebGIS was successful. So I'll just click on OK. Okay. So, I saved my credentials and it's warning me that I opted to save my password. It will be stored in an unsecured plain text. It's on my machine, so it's okay. Save it. Okay. So now we are connected to our WebGIS database that we created, or your database that you created. That's it. So I'll click on connect. So if you have different connections, you see all the connections here. So you just have to select the connection that you just added, then click on connect. Then because the database is empty, there is nothing in here. Usually when you connect, it's going to show all the data sets that you have, all the tables that you have in the database. Okay, so now that we've created that connection, we'll close this panel. Then we will now go to our database manager, what we started earlier. So I'll come to my database or DB manager. Then I'll come to PostGIS, because the data that we want to import the data into our PostGIS. So over here, when you come to the PostGIS, you will see the connection that you created. The name should appear here. So you can see that I created a connection called WebGIS, which is linked to my WebGIS database. Okay, so I'll highlight on that and open that to see. So you can see that currently we don't have any table or any data, just the PostGIS plugin features that we have in there. So now that we've activated our WebGIS connection, by opening and entering into it, you have to click on import. So when you click on import, this input drop down here has all the layers that you've loaded. So I'm going to load the first layer, that is water bodies first. Okay, so over here you can see there's a checkbox here which says import only selected feature. So look, selected features. So assuming we have some features, so let's say you want to select just some 3 regions. Let's say you want to select just these 2 regions and insert them into the database. So you use the select feature, select them. When you come here, you have to check it. But we want to inject everything into the database, so we won't check this. Okay, so you can see the schema. The schema I spoke about, the public. So the schema is public, and the table. So here over here is trying to tell you that we want to, which of the schemas do you want to save this table? Is the public schema that we want to save the table, the default schema. And here is the table. So you can see we have the same name. The name of the layer has been given to the name of the table. Over here, you can change the name. You can change the name to any name to identify that table. So personally, I'll say, okay, let me say river. I'm just changing the name so that it doesn't confuse. So over here, the table input here is going to, the name that you put in there is the name that the system is going to use in creating the table. So let's get that right. You can decide to maintain the name of the shapefile as your table name. It's up to you, depending on what you want to do. All right. So I've renamed my table. Then the table that I want to create, I want to use river, or let me use rivers. Okay. So I want, these are options that's like they are optional parameters, or these are optional, but you have to, in order to get your database in their right spatial, their coordinate systems or their spatial reference, you have to make sure that you state this here, so that when it's injecting the data, it will tell the database that the database and the data coming in here is, let's say, is in zone 30, zone 30N. Okay. So let's go on. So I'll check. I want you to give. I want the database to have a primary key with a serialized ID. Then it should create a geometry column where it will, and that's where it's going to save the geometry of the data sets. Yeah. So keep it. And the geometry column, you can decide to change the name. The primary key too, you can decide to change the name, but I'm just going to keep it as such. Over here, the source SRID. So here is the spatial reference, right? The coordinate system. So with the data sets that we have here, usually the system picks the spatial reference up, then it shows that here. But when I check it and I want to change the spatial, maybe the spatial reference here is not what the original spatial reference, you can change that here by clicking and search. You search for your spatial reference using the name or the EPSG code. And I'm sure I wouldn't dive into these things, because since we are all geospatial professionals here, or students, we should I know by now we all understand these things, because we use ArcGIS, we use any other GIS tools. You should be able to understand these coordinate reference systems. So the data set that we are using is has a EPSG 4326, that's geographic, WGS84. All right. And over here, the target SRID. So assuming our coordinates, our data set has a spatial reference of, let's say, the geographic, and I want to transform it, when I'm injecting, it should project it to, let's say, UTM. So you select the target, then you select the coordinate system that you want to transform, or you want to project the data to. But we want to keep it the same. So I'll just uncheck it, or you can check it with the same coordinate system. It wouldn't do anything. But the moment you change the coordinate system, it's going to project it to your the coordinate system that you've stated at the target SRID. Okay, and over here, encode your UTF-8. It will just keep it as default. And there's a checkbox here which says replace destination table if exists. So assuming you are importing the table and there is a table in there called rivers, when I check this and I click on OK, it wouldn't prompt me that there's a table in there called rivers. It will just overwrite whatever is there, whatever table with the same name that I'm bringing. But when you uncheck it, it's going to prompt you that there's a table like that there. So it's either you rename the new table you are bringing or you rename the table in there. So we'll just keep that off. And with the other ones, let's just we wouldn't check any of them. We'll just keep them as default. So when you're done, you just have to click on OK. Then the software will automatically inject the database, your shapefile into the database. So you can see import was successful. Let me click on OK. Now let me come to WebGIS, our folder here. Then let me come to public. Now you can see the table that and the shapefile that I imported. You can see that here, rivers. So it's now added to the database. Let's come to our pgadmin. When I come here, let me refresh the tables. Let me go to the database itself and refresh the database so that it will pick up the new. So you can see that. So you can see the rivers is showing here. Let me open that. The attribute. So if you want to open a certain table, you want to look view the contents of the table, you highlight on it and you click on this icon here. So this is our data set. So you can see the geometry with the ID. You can scroll. Let me scroll to the far end where the other attributes are. So the geometry field which we saved, we checked when we were trying to save it. That's it. And the other columns that were in the attributes of that shapefile. If you want to visualize this in PGAdmin has this interface where you can visualize your geometry. So when you click on this eye, it's going to plot the polygons or your spatial data sets that you've injected into the database. It's going to plot it on a leaflet map for you to visualize what you've injected or what you've saved in the database. Okay, so you can try that at your end. So you can see that. So that's the data set, the rivers. So even in our database, after importing, you can visualize your data sets in there. So that's our rivers. So I'm going to give each and everyone 1 minute to import the other data sets into our database. I'll be doing mine also. So I imported the water bodies. I want you to import the health sites. Then we can move on. Then after the health site, you import the river and the regions. Okay, so I will also do mine here. So, okay, with the health facilities, you can see that the EPSG is 32630. That is in UTM. But we want to keep all our data sets in one coordinate system, all our tables in one coordinate system, because we are going to build the system with this with these tables in order not to confuse some of us. So the source here, you can see we have 326, that's UTM zone 30. So the source is this, but the targets, I will change it to 4326 so that it will project it to that coordinate system. So it will conform with the first one that we imported. I hope I'm not confusing anyone. Yeah. So this was like, so this is an example of the explanation I made when I was trying to import the first one. Okay. So I'll just check this and import. Okay, I'll import my last one. That's our region. The region is already in that coordinate system, so I'll just save it. Okay. Then it's as easy as that. Let's wait for our friends who are still importing the data sets. So when I come to my public, I can see all the data sets are imported. You can see the health. And at a glance, you can see that the health facilities are like they are point features. And when you look at the region, you can see that it's a polygon feature. Okay. In the same way, assuming we have our data set or our shapefiles in our database, right? And we want to export the data and the table out of the database, you can use the export tool here to do that. So when you select the feature, you can export to file, then it's going to open this panel. And the panel here, the format, so it is going to ask you which of the formats you wanted. Do you want it as Joe package, X-ray, shapefile, or any extension that you want to export the data to? You can select that extension here. Then you can save it to the location that you want to save it. Then after you can save it. Yeah. So over here you have the source SRID and the target. So assuming the source is geographic as 4326 and you want to project it to UTM zone 30, you can check on the target and enter the EPSG code here for the coordinates and the coordinate system you want to project to. Okay. So because of our time, I will quickly move to the next thing, then we will finish today's agenda. So as it stands now, I'm assuming we've all imported our data or our shapefiles into our database, right? Okay. So let's do something. I'm going to close the panel. Then I will offload these guys here. We don't need these guys any longer because we have created a geodatabase and we've imported all our shapefiles into it. I think going forward, the GIS professionals among us, we can be doing this instead of you saving the shapefiles on your PCs and mistakenly someone deletes a certain, like, shapefile comes with I think 4 or 5 extensions. Somebody deletes the .dbf or the push file to tamper with the data sets. You can have your database, you import all your data in there. Anytime you want to use the data sets, you just have to connect to your database and just load them onto the screen. In the same way, in ArcGIS, I know there is a connection. There is a place where you can connect to databases and load the data sets. So why do you keep your shapefiles on your desktop? That's a little advice I can give it. All right, so we want to load what we've imported into our database, right? So when I come to our PostGIS here, I'll come to our connection. That's our WebGIS. I'll double click on that, come to public. Then I'll see, yeah, you can see the 3 shapefiles I loaded are imported into the database. So you just have to highlight it and drag it onto the layer panel, and it's going to load that. So you can see, I'll just highlight it and add a river, and I'll add the health facility. Then we are good to go. All right. So let me just pause for 20 seconds or 30 seconds for those of us lagging behind to speed up, so we can all move at the same pace. Okay, so just to chip in, if you also have other databases that you would like to connect, being it MySQL, Oracle, you can also do that connection here. And when you connect your Oracle or your MySQL database to your QGIS, each time you need any table from that connection or that database, you just have to open it and just drag it and put it on the layer panel, and you should be good to go. And when we get to the GeoServer bit, we'll be publishing our data sets as WMS and also publish it as WFX. So when you're able to publish your data set to WMS, you can also link it up here, WMX. Then each time you want to load it, so far as your GeoServer is running in the background, you can just load that data or that WMS file on the data set. Sorry, on your QGIS. Okay, so let's continue. So we are also we know we have about 6 or 7 shapefiles in that folder. I'll make sure we import all of them. But this time around, we are not using QGIS. We are going to use our PostGIS bundle. So let me minimize the QGIS. Then, so in order for you to import data into your PostGIS database without using QGIS, that is possible. There's a possibility there. So when you come to your start menu, then you search for PostGIS. So when you search for PostGIS, you will see PostGIS bundle 3. Depending on the version, like it came with your the installation. Mine is 3. Yours can be 2.5. I don't know if there's a version 4. I'm yet to find out. So you just have to click on it to launch that application. Okay. So now that the application is launched, you go to View Connection Details. So you click on View Connection Details and you get this. So let's provide the same parameters that we provided when we were trying to connect our database to the QGIS. We provide the same parameters here in order to connect the PostGIS bundle to the database. So my username was Postgres, then my password. Okay, then the server host. So let me reiterate this again. If it's a server online or a server in a local server at the office, you need the IP. You input the IP there. Then you should be good to go. But this is a database sitting on my PC. That's why we are using localhost. Then you enter the name of the database. That is WebGIS for mine. Then when you are done, you click on OK. So when you click on OK, please check on the log window. If you get any error here, it means that the credentials that you provided is wrong. So kindly recheck the credentials, the username and the password together with the database name. So when you get connection succeeded, it means you are good to go. All right. So over here, we will add our shapefile to the system or to our database. So I'll click on add file. Then I will navigate to where the data is, our shapefile is, the shapefile that we want to import. So I'm going to navigate to the folder in which I saved the shapefiles. Then okay, let me check. I'm supposed to see an internship folder here. I'm not finding my folders here. Let me see. Okay, let me just, in order to save some time, let me just bring this here. Have a copy. Sorry. Okay. Okay, please, are you able to select your navigate to the shape the folder in which you saved your shapefile? Let me. My PC is not responding to the clicks. Oh, okay, let me quickly re-download the shapefile I shared here. So I think this will give us some time to catch up. Those of us who are lagging behind to catch up with it. So I'm trying to get that shapefile again. So I'll pause for another 20 seconds for you to go through. I hope you can all see my screen. I'm getting a feedback. Some of you can't see my screen. Please, can you all see my screen? Can anyone see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Oh, okay, then I think it's from the person side. Okay, so let's go back to our QGIS. I'll close our PostGIS bundle, then come to our QGIS. Then let's come to our WebGIS connection. Then over here, you can refresh the browser to get the new data set you imported. So I'll load the POIs. I'll load the airports. Then I will load, okay, the region is already loaded. POIs here. So I think we've loaded all, I think there are 6, so it's left with 1. Rivers, we have rivers, we have regions, we have real lines. Okay, we left the real lines. So now that, let me uncheck them and inspect all these. So now that we've been able to load our data sets in QGIS, we are not done with QGIS. So the next phase is to now publish our data sets to GeoServer. Someone will ask, why are we using GeoServer in publishing? One thing is when you have a heavy GeoJSON or a shapefile, you know, these shapefiles, like the region shapefile you are seeing on my screen now, is very heavy. So at times when you are loading it on your map, it takes a while to load, and at times when it loads, depending on the topology of the data set, at times you have to simplify it for it to be more lighter for it to load. So, but when you publish it in GeoServer, GeoServer converts this data set to it converts the data set to WMS, which is like an image, and it's more lighter than the shapefile. And when you are loading that on your leaflet or any of your WebGIS libraries, it's much more faster, and you can easily style that in QGIS. Then you save the file the styles, and later when you go to your GeoServer, you can apply the same styles in there. So at this point, we spent about 1 hour 10 minutes. I think we've exceeded our minimum. That's an hour. I'll pause here and I'll open the floor for questions for us to digest what I've taught. Then before we move to the next phase, that will be on Friday. So Friday we'll be moving to the GeoServer itself. We'll come back to QGIS and go back to GeoServer. But depending on the number of questions that comes up, if we're unable to exhaust the 30 minutes left, I'll quickly show you something on the QGIS, how to export the styles from QGIS. Then we'll use that styles when we go to GeoServer. All right. So the floor is open now. If you have any question, you can type it in the chats and we will read that. Okay, so the first question I'm seeing here is how can I add a server? I hope Nafisa too, I hope you've been able to add the server is, so what I was illustrating there was to show you how to add a different source. Yeah. So if you want to add a different source, but look, defaultly the software that you've installed is connected to the local host. That's the PostGIS database on your machine. It's already connected to it. So there's no need for you to add a server. Yeah. And the other question is, use the password during the installation. Okay, I think someone was answering a question. I wouldn't read that. Please, my Postgres bundle 3 for Postgres isn't loading, and all the Postgres was installed correctly. Even the PD admin is responding. Okay, so these are like exceptions. If you're having similar issues, right after this section, I'll be online. Then I'll have a one-on-one with you to see where the issue is. Maybe it might be the installation, something went wrong, or yeah, so we'll look at it together and fix it. And talking of that, please, I apologize to all those I promised to get back to you today. I was locked up in a meeting and I left very late, so I couldn't reach out to you. I'll try as much as possible to reach out to you either this evening or early tomorrow morning. All right. Thank you. Okay, someone is also getting an error. Connection to server localhost 40 field. Okay. Now, please, can you elaborate what exactly were you trying to do before you had this error? So if you can add some comments to it, what were you trying to do? Were you trying to connect the QGIS to
No,
the database, or you're
I was
trying
trying
to
to create
connect
a
the
database.
PostGIS bundle to the database? What were you trying to do?
I was trying to create a database under my Postgres 14. So when I click
Yeah,
on
so
it,
over
it keeps
here,
asking for
the
password.
error is stating that your Postgres is not running. So kindly check whether if you are using a Windows machine, go to services and check whether the PostgreSQL is running. It's a service. Check whether it's running. If it's not running, start it so that you try the process again. It seems it's down. Okay. Is there
Thank
any
you.
other question before we wrap up for today's section? I can see some people are typing, but they are not done typing. So, but please, I hope you all understood. Majority of you understood what I taught today. Or this is the basis of whatever we are going to go through for the next 8 weeks. Yeah. So if you don't understand the foundation, whatever you'll be building on will be shaky.
Okay.
Yeah. So kindly prompt me if you don't understand anything. And also, I know there are a lot of professionals on the page, a lot of people who are more experienced than I do. Kindly help our colleagues who are having issues. I can't be attending to all the 1,031 people every day. So if somebody asks a question on the platform, if I see it, if I'm at work and I'm busy, I might look at it and I might not be able to reply. But if you are less busy or like at your leisure time, you see any question which you think you can help the person out, kindly try as much as possible to help the person out. We are all helping ourselves. As I'm teaching now, I'm also learning from some of you. At times, some of our colleagues get some errors, which personally I have not encountered before. So through the error, I learn a new thing and I add it to whatever I know now. Okay. Since I can see some people typing, but the messages are not coming. So okay. After adding the layer to QGIS, how do I load or import? Say the code execution cannot proceed.
Sorry, can you hear me, Mr. Ernest? Okay, what? Can you hear me?
Okay, the message has been deleted.
Oh,
All right.
okay.
So please, if you can rephrase the question and put it on the page, any of us can
Yeah, I
respond
think
or
I'll just.
answer our colleague. And if you have any issue that you think is exceptional, you can also DM me. We have Jedediah on the page. We have Eugene on the page. I know there are other professionals I can tell. I know Emmanuel July is also on the page. The other PhD and professors on the page, which I know they are more experienced, so you can hit on them also to help you. But when you put it on the page, everybody sees it, and whoever sees it first will help you out. All right. So thank you very much for your time
Okay.
today,
Hello, Mr. Ernest.
and
Hello.
let's keep practicing. And as I made mention earlier in our first section, if you don't practice, you forget them, and the next time you come back, you have to start all over again. So try as much as possible to practice whatever you've taught. So this is a day 2. We are going up until 8 weeks from now. So now we are left with, let's say, we are left with 7 weeks from now. So whatever we learn, try as much as possible to practice. That's why we've left one day in between all the periods. So you use Thursdays to practice what we learned. We learned on Wednesday. Then we come back on Friday and continue. Then Saturday we open the floor. If you have any question, you can bring it up. All the instructors will be there. All the professionals will be there. When you ask the question, we will help you out so that you can cross that obstacle.
Hello, Mr. Ernest.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
guys, colleagues, thank you very much.
Hello.
Have
Hello.
a nice evening, morning, afternoon. Stay blessed. Bye bye. I'll post the video on the platform before I sleep. So expect that before tomorrow morning. All right. Take care.
Hello,
Bye
Hello,
bye.
Ernest.